Well, good day. My name is Scott Douglas. I have the privilege of being here today. I'm encouraged about my beautiful life I live, and I want to share a bit about with you the amazing quality of life that's still available when you simply make your life a choice and make it the most phenomenal every single day. I want to talk a bit about my home life. I want to talk a bit about my upbringing, and I want to share with you the life that is still so amazing when I can live it with determination every single day. I grew up in a home with an extremely abusive father. I was the middle child of three siblings, and I grew up in a home where the RCMP were called quite often to our house because of horrific physical and sexual abuse going on. I want to say today, though, that even though the hard times I endured as a child, it made me into somebody that I cherish today. There were many times I was the individual who would stop the abuse from happening because my father was afraid of me. Because I was always the one who told him that if this doesn't stop, I will make it stop by calling the RCMP. Today, as I think back and ponder about the past, I see such beauty in every single day. But today, growing up, I seen so much trauma in my own life and my family's lives and how it affected them. How today the triggers still happen, but it's because of a simple choice I decided to make, that you must move on with life and continue to make it the most phenomenal daily. I was extremely protective of my family growing up, as I was the one who was always the guiding hand that my family needed in so many times of horrific abuse. There were many times I would come home from school. I would see my mother or my siblings crying because of the abuse that they had endured all day long. And unfortunately, my dad took advantage of my family when he had days off and caused such horrific confusion in our home. As a child, I would go to school, and it was always on my mind, what's going to happen today that's going to affect my family's way of life? That was always a thought that I pondered because the abuse cycle was so horrific in my home. And it was always in the back of my mind that what if I'm not there today and something bad happens? I seriously thought every day, the confusion in my own mind, the depression I began to go under, the suicidal thoughts and feelings that attained to my mindset were because I felt I was being held accountable because I knew what was going on and I didn't know what to do. The beautiful thing of it all, though, was today we're a family of love, we're a family of hope, and we're the vision for others to be the voice who are struggling so bad today. Growing up, though, I had many good times, as I feel that 10% out of 90% were good and 90% was bad. What was so amazing to me, though, my family confided in me. As they loved me, they knew that I was the stronghold in my family, and I was able to conquer the sad times and be the support to my family they needed today. Many times, as I would come home from school, or I would come home from work after school, and my family would share with me, we would sit down together, arms around one another, and they would share with me the horrific abuse that had gone on that day. We cried together and we decided we're going to make a change in our home. Many times, like I have said, I went to the RCMP. I called the RCMP. My father was on the radar many times, as even in the folks in our community. At that time, we had such a supportive group of individuals. They were always there to be a kind, listening ear to us. They were always there to be a friend to us because they knew something was not right in our home. What was so brutal to me growing up, though, my father always threatened me especially. He threatened all of us, but especially me, because he didn't like me, because he knew that I would go to the RCMP about this abuse. He always threatened us, especially me, and said if we ever brought this to the RCMP or talked to the community about this horrific abuse going on in our home, that he always threatened he was going to kill us. He didn't say how or what, but that was always in the back of my mind. What if I talk about it and we all get killed for me being honest? The horrific, sad times about this all, though, was we grew up very religious in a religious organization in the community I grew up in. My father would go to church with us every Sunday. He would preach behind the pulpit, talk about the Lord Jesus, talk about the love he had for God and Christianity. But behind it all, he was living a lie, abusing us in the most horrific ways. And unfortunately, my church people, my friends in church, knew something was seriously wrong. They began to come up to me and say, "Scott, are you truly all right?" And we were always told if we told anybody, we were threatened our lives. So it was always in the back of my mind not to say a word about this horrific abuse. What was so amazing through this all, though, the last time I had gone to the RCMP, they finally decided they were going to do an open investigation about this case. And they started realizing from the community that had been speaking up against this abuse, me reporting my father to the RCMP so many times, this investigation began. And it felt like forever, because we always felt that if we say anything, our lives would be on the line. The investigation, though, was several years, and it continued till I was about 15 years old. That's the year my mom and father got divorced, which I believe was the most amazing thing ever. It gave us closure of that horrific abuse. It gave us a sincere compassion to be the voice for so many voiceless out there today, who are unwilling, or maybe who were scared to talk about their past because they knew their lives would be on the line. I began through this time of the divorce of my parents, I began to be overwhelmed with negative feelings in my life and heart, to the point that I began to contemplate suicide, because I always felt that the abuse happening in my home were my fault because I didn't do enough about it. I began to go down a very bad line of thinking, which began to overwhelm me so bad, I attempted suicide 3 different times. And the beautiful thing was, I lived through every time. And I have such a love for anybody dealing with this horrific trauma and abuse and the triggers that bring on such a negative impact today. When you're worried, when you're scared to talk about it. During this time, though, as the divorce began to move forward, me and my brother and my sister, we were all admitted to a psychiatric facility because of the damage this abuse did to us as a family. The damage that it made such negative feelings in our minds that we were responsible for this abuse caused such trauma in the mindset of us as a family. During this time, though, as I was in the hospital, me and my brother and my sister, we were there for a month. And that was the most beautiful time of my life. I shared with so many counselors, psychologists. I talked about the past. I talked about the abuse cycle that made me and my siblings believe that we're at fault for not talking about this. We then were discharged from the psychiatric facility. And my mom, being the most supportive mother of all, decided it was probably good for me and my siblings to move away, to get a new lease on life. She thought maybe we could have a better positive impact in our own mind and life by simply moving to a new location and giving us new thinking and a new mindset of motivating power. To be able to reach out to others, to be able to move forward from this abuse, to be able to move on with our lives. That's when I began to spiral out of control again. I was living in Saskatchewan at that time. I began to get in a crowd of alcohol and drugs. I began to spiral out of control again, even though I had initially thought that I had dealt with this horrific abuse. I began to spiral out of control with a crowd of friends who I thought were friends. I began to go down a very wrong path of getting into serious drugs and getting into the alcohol, which was making me feel that I was able to numb my mind from the past. And it began to get so bad out of control that I felt I needed to do something. I want to share with you the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And that is the morning, the day I bought my snowmobile. I thought maybe if I bought a snowmobile that would give me a release of my past. I could think on new positive ways to give my mindset a brand new vision of hope. But what I want to share with you all today is that morning I told myself, I don't know anybody that, if you believe in higher power or God or anything like that, but I got on the edge of my bed that morning and I said, today, something seriously must happen in order for me to realize that the way I'm going down with my life, I need to see through this all, because I knew if I didn't, I would either die from an OD or I would be killed from a drunk driving accident. That's when my most amazing thing happened to me is I got on my snowmobile at 11 o'clock that night. I had been at work all that day and it was on my mind. What if something bad happens to me? Am I going to be able to see through it all and realize that I have a problem? Oh, today, as I got on my snowmobile that night, 11 p.m., minus 35 degrees Celsius. It was dark outside. I was going through an area which was kind of my fault, but I was going through an area at 70 miles an hour. Being dark out, I couldn't see an approach of an oncoming ditch that I hit at 70 miles per hour. I was conscious the whole time I hit the approach. I flew over the road into the opposite ditch, and then I hit a big pole, and there I lay. It was minus 35 degrees. I lay there. I knew something was very wrong. I instantly lost feeling from my waist down, and I didn't know what to do. I began to cry out. And what was so amazing during this time, the neighbor's dog was barking and came and laid beside me, whimpering, because I felt a love from that dog, that he was there to see me through this horrific ordeal. 45 minutes later, my brother had this feeling that he needed to call my cousin, where I was living with at that time. And he asked my cousin, "Have you seen my brother Scott lately?" And he said, "I have not." So he went out. He got on his snowmobile and found me laying out there. And there I was. I was crying because I felt that this was the beginning of a new time in my life where I had asked that something change me. And I vowed that day that it would change me forever. I then got ground ambulanced to Lloydminster Hospital. I was then sent from the Lloydminster Hospital to the Lloyd Airport, where a Medivac airplane met the ambulance there, and I was then airlifted to the University of Alberta Hospital in Edmonton. And I was in a coma for about a month. Oh, today, though, as I woke up from this coma, I had a team of doctors standing over me. And I was kind of confused as I had just woken up from this coma. And I had wondered what was going on. It was all new reality to me. I looked on the edge of my bed. There was a wheelchair there. And this team of doctors, about 6, 7 of them, told me, "My friend, today you have a choice. And that choice will be beneficial on your mindset, how you choose to live your life for the rest of your life, by simply accepting what has happened." And my friends, that is today where I chose that my life started from that hospital bed. And I chose that I can allow my past to make me into a bitter or better person. And from that day forth, I chose better. What was so beautiful through this all, I had such a supportive mother, brother, and sister, my friends. My church folks were such a support to me. My doctors, the nurses at that hospital, the team, were so supportive to me and gave me such love and hope and told me that today is a new day, my friend, and you must live it to the most fullest every single day. If I can forward my life after being out of that hospital bed, we were then brought forth to court because the RCMP investigation had finally brought this case of horrific sexual abuse to court. And there I was. I got to see my father many times for 5 years with a challenge of being the vision of hope and encouragement to my family as I represented them there every court case, because they were too burdened by the impact that the abuse had had on them. What was so beautiful through this all, though, we were in court for 5 years, like I had said. And during this time, the man that had caused such horrific abuse, I seen him the last time we were at a court case. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the court case was then resolved, they said, because with his diagnosis of Alzheimer's, they felt it was no longer good to pursue charges against him. The last time I seen him in court, I said, "Dad, I want to share with you today that I love you. And what has happened in the past, I have chose to forgive and allow this to make me into a better person and not become bitter. Because bitterness causes such damage in the mind, my friends." This is where I want to share with you all today that the beauty of forgiveness has such an amazing impact on the mind. And today, my friends, we all have a choice. We may all have experienced hard times in life, but the choice is up to us. Am I going to allow my past to let me become bitter? Or am I going to allow it to let me become better, into a person full of hope, a person full of vision, and a person to be the voice for so many who can't be the voice because they're scared of the outcome? I have always believed and said, even though I've been in a wheelchair now for 20 years, that a wheelchair does not confine you into who you think you cannot be. But if you allow it to inspire you, it will give you hope. It will give you such a determined outlook to continue down this beautiful road of life that we all so cherish and live with. So much hope, where we can be the encouragement to so many on this walk of life today. One last thing I wanted to say is, when you look back on your life, what do you see? Do you see it as a negative or a positive outcome? Because today, my friends, you simply must choose. That choice is yours. That choice is up to you, to make you believe that you are the power. You are a powerhouse of inspiration to those who are inspired to keep going on this walk of life today. Let us live with a better outcome. Let us not live with the effects of becoming bitter, because it brings us down such a terrible negative way of thinking. Thank you very much.